So I suppose we are going to talk about the meeting that happened last Friday between Trump and Zelensky at the Oval Office and how it went south and what happened afterwards. But before we say more about this, we have Islander number 3. It's out. I think
Proud.
It's proud. Islander 3 out of the closet.
But
out of the box.
It's a very beautiful aesthetic magazine. It's got some lovely... Here's the contents page. Lots of good authors here. Lots of people you'll like. I'm looking forward to giving it a read. I haven't got my own copy yet. But Rory's really done a great job with the sort of almost medieval-esque art style in this one.
And it's only £15, $14.99 actually. It's not even 15. It's $14.99, right?
It's a bargain. That's cheaper than many bespoke magazines elsewhere.
Exactly, and we have also a St. George mug. We have a Father Robinson T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we're going to be talking about him
Check
today in the podcast.
Check them out. Right. So I want the war to end.
Mm-hmm.
I want the war in Ukraine to end.
So do I, yes.
Obviously, the question is, what are the terms according to which it's going to end? But I think that what is interesting now is that right now we're on the show period. Mm-hmm. I think that right now a lot of things are going to get much, much worse before they get better. And I've said also in previous segments I have been on when it comes to Ukraine, I think right now there may also be an escalation in violence at some point.
Because normally the way things go in war, as far as I understand, obviously I've never fought in one, but just from my knowledge of them, things tend to escalate right until the day in which a ceasefire or peace agreement is signed, because you want to get the best terms for,
yes,
the peace agreement, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And so it seems like it's going to follow that trend.
Exactly, because, I mean, it's difficult when you want to stop the war and end the war, you're going to something that's called, I think, an antebellum balance. You can't go back to where it was in the beginning. You have to strike a new balance of power and find exactly where to draw the borders. So one of the things that, for instance, the Ukrainians would want right now is to escalate their effort in order to have more cards on the table in exchange for in any negotiation.
That seems to be a pretty standard.
Yes.
Well, it's not even a partisan view that's the sort of natural course of things. Everyone's sort of saying that that's going to happen.
Exactly. Right. And I think we should definitely say that a lot of the speech acts involved in the rhetoric of politicians, wherever they are from, is, I think, more an expression of resolution than something to be taken literally as either true or false.
That's very true. I think that there's been a lot of posturing, and I imagine that a lot of what people are saying publicly just around the world about the conflict is more about image than it is about substance necessarily.
Yes.
It could be in some cases, but
yes,
as a general rule, people are trying to get themselves in the correct position.
But I think also this extends to politicians, because
mainly politicians, yeah,
because they are trying to increase their power in order for the next negotiation table, let's say. So I think a lot of people understand this when it comes to Trump, that he isn't always veridical. A lot of the times he's just recognizing the field, but they don't recognize it to other leaders, whether they agree with them or not. So I think the Europeans, for instance, are doing just that at the moment. They're also expressing resolution, not necessarily something that is true or false. Right. So we have some context before the meeting. We have here Trump in the 18th of February saying at the end that you shouldn't have started the war, implying Ukraine. And then we had another case of doublespeak coming from Trump. On the one hand, he said Zelensky is a dictator, and on the other, when it in front of Keir Starmer, he said, "Did I say this? I can't believe I said that." But you see, I'm not saying this in order to say, well, here's an obvious contradiction, because it is. But I'm trying to say that this is a case of language where it's used in order to express resolution. On the one hand, he wants to pressure Zelensky in order to say, listen, my eye is on you and you need to make concessions. On the other, maybe he heard something, maybe he talked something with Keir Starmer, And
I would be very surprised if Keir Starmer had an insight that changed Trump's mind. Keir Starmer, who doesn't dream, doesn't have a favourite book or film, has a novel insight that opened his eyes to this new perspective.
You never know, Josh.
It's possible.
But what I will say is that optics matter, and I think that this is going to be the main aspect of our segment. And I really think Keir Starmer could have used a better posture to sit. But that's
he came across as very weak, didn't he, when he met Trump?
Right.
Starmer. I know that's not what we're talking about, but still. He was trying to fawn all over him as well. You could see that Trump was the man who held all the cards there.
Yes, I mean, we have to put the criticism of Starmer in the segment somehow.
It's obligatory at this point, isn't it?
Right. Okay. And also, one of the main contextual factors here was the U.S.-Ukraine minerals deal, because Zelensky knew that he was going to talk about the minerals deal with Trump, and Trump also knew that he was going to talk about it.
Are you going to talk a little bit more about this? Because there is something I would like to point out about this, that I've been thinking about this. And obviously, Trump's doing this from the perspective of a lot of Republicans are rightfully annoyed that a lot of money has gone for the defense of a foreign country when it could be going to America. I entirely understand that. I would feel the same. And I do, in fact, because Britain has done the same thing. And so Trump going and getting something in return, which is this minerals deal, helps sort of placate some of the concerns, even though it'd be better that all of the taxpayers got their money back. But this is serving that purpose for them. But for the Ukrainians, what people have perhaps overlooked more so is that what they get in return is that US contractors, US citizens are going to be in Ukraine doing the mineral extraction, right? I would imagine if they're going to be 50% US owned, as has been discussed, there's going to be a considerable number of US citizens in Ukraine, which means if Russia then invades again, does a surprise attack, then there's going to be a lot of additional US casualties, and that's a massive disincentive for the Russians, who don't want to provoke an even more boots on the ground response from the United States, because it wouldn't end well for them.
Exactly. I think it's actually something that is really sensible. Also, it would be sensible for Zelensky to...
They're also not in a position, really, after having their country on war footing and being bombed to smithereens, to pay back all of their loans, because, of course, offering access to the resources directly allows them to sort of mitigate the inability to get all of this capital at such short notice.
I'm a bit more cynical than that, and I think that it was always going to come to this.
Probably, yeah.
Even if the Democrats were at the moment, and even if they had the administration and the presidency, it would come down to that. So in one sense or another. Now, I'm not talking about the specific deal and the specific clauses, but there would be exchanges. I mean, when it came to Afghanistan, weren't there some companies, some of them, I think, had the ties to Donald Rumsfeld that were involved into building infrastructure of Afghanistan again.
It sounds about right.
Yeah, so it was always going to come to this, and I think people who think otherwise would be completely unrealistic. But I don't know about the specifics of the details. But one thing that is really good that you mentioned is that economic entanglement and economic presence, and the presence of extended U.S. interests in Ukraine, whether they say it or not in the deal, would function as a sort of security guarantee.
That's exactly it, isn't it? And it's sort of a softer way of, rather than the US having troops stationed in Ukraine, of the United States saying, hey, Ukraine's under our protection now.
And I think that it's not so much Trump as much as some of the lobbies behind him. And I've said so also in another segment we did when we were discussing about Greenland and Canada. And not many people liked it. But there are the tech bros who want access to rare minerals for tech industry products.
Yeah,
for them being more competitive on a global scale.
We're gonna see some more US intervention. I can't speak today. So maybe they're going to get involved in the Congo because there's lots of rare earth minerals there as well. And there's a conflict going on at the minute. So you never know.
Yeah.
Called it here first.
Right, so according to the BBC, the terms of the deal were as follows. The preliminary agreement envisages that an investment fund will be set up for Ukraine's reconstruction. And they said that according to the deal, Ukraine will contribute 50% of future proceeds from state-owned mineral resources, oil and gas to the fund, and the fund will then invest to promote the safety, security, and prosperity of Ukraine. I think whether directly or indirectly, that was what it was going to come down to. So probably, I think at the end of the day, what they're discussing is the percentage. Mm-hmm. Most probably Zelensky doesn't want to give 50, wants less. And most
he'd rather zero, wouldn't he?
He would rather zero, but also...
Well, actually, having the US presence there is useful. So zero, maybe not, but a smaller percentage.
Yes, but also I think at the end of the day, it wouldn't just be the percentage for him that matters, but he would, as he has been explicit about, he would also want to have further stuff in, like, for instance, entrance into NATO. As he has said, and I'll show you, said that I will resign if we I will step down if we enter NATO. So it's understandable. He goes maximalist. He asks for as much as possible as he can.
That's known as the art of the deal.
Yes. Right. So here we have some things about the meeting. First of all, I don't think it should be televised. That's me. I don't think diplomacy should be televised in such a way. I know what you think about it.
It doesn't make for productive conversation, does it, really? If you've got a number of people stood around with microphones, boom mics, cameras, it sort of makes it all for show, doesn't it? Which a lot of the discourse around this has already been.
Yes, and I think optically it didn't help, because what happened was, for instance, it emboldened Zelensky with the Europeans, and also I don't think optically this is a good image to portray within the Western camp.
Yeah, I think that both sides can go away from this conversation feeling like it could have gone better. I think that's fair to say. Things that Zelensky wants to look as if he's buddy with the US, because if it looks like the US has got Ukraine's back, then he's got a better position in Ukraine against the Russians. And, of course, you don't want to see this rift between the US and the continent of Europe, because a lot of the Europeans have just unequivocally backed Zelensky, whereas Trump has been a lot more critical, which I understand from his position.
Yes, but I will say this, and this is an unpopular take or something, but I think that the more eagerness is shown to end the war, the more the war is going to be prolonged.
No,
I'm a big believer into the peace through strength narrative, and whether it's in more Reaganite form, if you want to put it, yes, that's
if you go to your enemy, say, after talking for a long time how much you want peace and how the war's not going well for you, you're not exactly going to the table with the best deck of cards to the best hand.
But also the point is, I think that it's not a good idea to show excessive eagerness to end the conflict and be way more eager than the people who are fighting in it. I think you should be. They should come to ask you to stop it. You shouldn't project that, no, I want to end this because I can't sustain it. Mm-hmm. It could be the case that it's unsustainable. But as I said in the beginning, rhetoric is expression of resolution, and it has nothing to do with truth and falsity in geopolitics. Yes, that's why I'm saying that the more it's televised and the more it shows a rift within this camp of allies, and for the time being they are allies, mm-hmm. the more it shows excessive eagerness.
I do agree.
That doesn't help, I think.
The best way to keep peace is to be strong. Weakness brings about war, doesn't it? That's one of the sort of truisms of all of humanity. And by showing a form of weakness, what they're doing is potentially, I think there's probably blame on both Zelensky and Trump and Vance's behalf. Maybe not proportionate, but there's an imbalance there. But I think that both sides could have behaved more tactfully that had things gone slightly differently, it probably would have been a much better resolution for both sides.
To be honest, I think this was going to happen, and probably it will happen again. It will happen many times, and it may have happened many times. It's just that right now, because it's televised, it adds pressure into the mix.
That's true.
Right. So yeah, what I wanted to show here is that I don't think that why don't you wear a suit is a serious question. Honestly, sorry, I don't think it's a serious question, because this is a choice by wartime leaders to convey a sense of a situation being a situation of emergency, and the same happens here with Winston Churchill in 1942 or 43. It's just it happens.
He's doing it to convey a message, and I think that they knew why he's not wearing a suit. It's a choice of image, and it's not like it's a surprise. Like if he turned up in like a tracksuit after wearing a suit the entire time, maybe it'd be fair to say, hang on a minute, are you turning up scruffy? If you invite Zelensky in, it's fair to assume that he's going to turn up like that, I suppose.
Right, and here we have for anyone who wants to see, I think you may have watched it 1,000 times by now, we have the video of the shouting match between Zelensky and Trump. And I wanted to say that if we look at the whole clip, I think the first 40 minutes were relatively okay-ish.
Yeah, we're fine, yeah.
Yes. And I think that at some point there was some tension, which was understandable. And there was tension also in the first 40 minutes. But I think that at the end of the day, most probably what's going on is that Trump and Vance decided that they should play good cop and bad cop. And because they are adding pressure to Zelensky, maybe because they want him to stop asking for NATO entry, or maybe because they want to take more into the
Yeah, I don't think Ukraine
deals.
Joining NATO would necessarily be a good idea.
Well, most probably that's what's happened. So now they're playing tug of war. And yeah, that's basically it. That's what happened. And my guess is that they're gonna continue doing this. Right. So here we have the contrast in body language, as they said, with Vance and Rubio. I think that was.
Why does Marco Rubio look like that?
I don't know. I think that was in the beginning when it was the question about the suit. You see here, Marco Rubio is particularly happy. But generally speaking, Marco Rubio wasn't happy because he's also the foreign relations minister. So most of the work is gonna fall on his shoulders. So
that's true.
He's literally saying, "Guys, you're all of you are adding work."
So he's watching his own workload go up in real time. There, that's why he's grumpy. Okay, fair enough.
To be fair here to Zelensky, when again that's gonna be a bit unpopular, but I didn't see him as much disrespectful here, to be honest. It's something that I would definitely expect from someone who is in a wartime president, and also MAGA is supposed to be in favor of direct, hard, no nonsense talking. So I didn't consider him to be particularly disrespectful.
I think I can understand why people would go away from looking at it and think that he was being disrespectful, but I think also there's an element of he's talking in a second language, and you can hear in how he articulates himself that he's not as fluent as you would like. And I'm not necessarily putting it down to that, but there's sort of a language barrier. He's also turned up not in a suit like everyone else. He's sort of the odd one out. There are lots of things that sort of add up to give this perception of, is he disrespecting everyone around him because he's standing out so much, isn't he, relative to everyone in the room? And also the fact that it's something that Zelensky brings up that sort of ignites the tension, if you will.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's polarization, yes. But also I think it's not an issue of the suit. I think that was more like just...
It's just a jab, wasn't it? It was nothing too deep to it.
That was a jab. I think that what was the issue that they started, it was his exchange with Vance. And Vance was saying essentially stuff that Zelensky told him, this is Russian propaganda. I think that was the main thing. And then Vance started... telling him that you're disrespectful, and whether you've said things.
It is a little bit insulting to say you're just spewing Russian propaganda when he's the one in the Oval Office. I can see why Vance got his back up, but Vance also has to behave a bit more tactfully, specifically when you can pull out sound bites and the left-wing media is going to parade it around saying, look at what they're doing, they're jeopardizing the deal. And I don't think that that's actually happened, but you've got to be a little bit more savvy than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally the worst choice was to televise it, because I think most probably this is going to happen 10 times more if it hasn't happened yet. If it hasn't happened 10 times. It's negotiations. You are negotiating between people who are fighting. Spirits are going to be high. And the point is that if you're going to televise it, also televise a meeting with Putin.
I didn't see that happening.
Right. So here we have this clip from the White House. Have you said thank you once that they made from Vance?
I think this is the one thing where I was just like, okay, I can understand why people were a bit upset at Vance for this one, because actually, as much as I question the character of Zelensky and his government, and also I question the amount of money that's gone to his country from, the US, UK, other European countries, he has gone around and repeatedly said that he's grateful for it, and the people of Ukraine thank you for it. I've seen it loads, and you've got all the examples already. You presaged what I was saying, and I think that
it comes off as being unprepared. So yeah, I mean, it's
I think
easiest thing you can find is
also you don't. I think what JD Vance specifically said is you haven't said thank you in this meeting, which makes it sound like he wants him to grovel at his feet. Which, I can understand why he might be insistent on that from an optical perspective, but also I think it's not necessarily the best look.
I don't think it is, because the point is that if you televise it, most people are going to view it veridically. Whereas what they're doing is essentially showing each other's throats and say, I'm tough. That's what they're doing. But when they televise, and that's what, from a realistic perspective, that's what they should do. But by it being televised, people are going to look at it in terms of truth or falsity. So that's, I think, what could have been done better. Right. So afterwards, Zelensky left the White House. And here we have Trump saying Zelensky needs to stop talking about Putin this and Putin that, all negative things. That was,
okay.
Okay. We had here Lindsey Graham completely saying, I'm proud. I've never been prouder of Trump and Vance.
I'm a little bit surprised at Lindsey Graham all of a sudden becoming a cheerleader for them, because he's not exactly known for that.
Yeah, but can't it be explained with what I'm saying about statements not being true or false in their minds, but them using statements as expressions of resolution? Because they could be saying, okay, Trump is going to be the very anti-war, we're going to be the very pro-war, and we're going to essentially play both sides.
That's exactly what's going on. I very much agree. Yeah, and I think that's why the idea that it's Zelensky messing up. It's Trump working with a lot of his Republican colleagues, really.
Yeah. Somehow now Zelensky tells BBC that Ukraine that he's ready to sign the mineral deals with the US. And after that, he went to London. He came to London. He met Keir Starmer. They had an emergency meeting in London with several leaders. Zelensky says here, I'm exchangeable for NATO.
What does that mean, exchangeable? I think
presidency,
I know.
His presidency.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like maximalistic demand. We're at the point here. He says he essentially says that Putin is breaking the ceasefires. It's the opposite of what he was being told in the meeting. That's to be expected. Right here, I think Keir Starmer made the biggest, in a sense, non-statement, because a lot of people are mad at him for saying so. But I think he said, we are ready to put boots on the ground and air on, and planes on the air.
Planes on the air.
Yes, to defend Ukraine. But also he said that the US must be involved. So this basically means I want to liaise between the two of you.
So Keir Starmer on this sort of thing, a lot of people have been mistaking what's actually going on here. People think that Keir Starmer's saying that we're going to put UK troops in the trenches of Ukraine before there's peace settled. And from what I actually understand, it's more that we're going to send people to guarantee, is like a security force basically, to guarantee the peace signing and the discussions to just keep the country safe whilst there are negotiations and no war going on. So there's got to be a ceasefire before we send troops there. So there's not really, unless something terrible happens, going to be a conflict. And I'm not necessarily saying we should even do that. That's just, it seems like lots of people are misunderstanding what's being proposed or discussed, from what I gather anyway. But it has been unclear, so it's not necessarily unfair to go to that sort of direction.
Yeah. But also, because that's also the theme of the segment, it's not an issue of what Zelensky, Trump, Vance, or Starmer are saying. It's an issue of what they imply. It's an expression of resolution. It's us. I want to liaise between the two of you. That's what he says. And he actually also said it explicitly afterwards, that he says that he is working with Macron from France in order to create a negotiation deal and then present it to the US. Right. But here Zelensky managed to get a 2.26 billion pounds loan. I don't know if you heard that, Josh.
I did, yeah. Just a little bit more of my tax money disappearing. Thanks for that.
I think people made the estimate that this is around £85 per person.
That's what I've seen going around, yeah. Just some more money out of my bank account when I'm already struggling to make ends meet. Thanks for that.
And here we have the European Union hosting an emergency meeting in London. And we have Donald Tusk saying 500 million Europeans are asking 300 million Americans to defend them against 140 million Russians. Europe today lacks the belief that we are truly a global power. And I mean, I think it's insane that Europe has put itself in that position. To another extent, it has been placed in such a position post-World War II.
Yeah, I mean, the American government has deliberately orchestrated this, and I do like the fact that what Trump and Vance are trying to do is give us a little bit more, basically give us a kick up the backside to start sticking up for ourselves. And I think that that's a good direction for us to go in, because in many ways Europe could be one of the major martial powers in the world. And I know that Britain still projects its power beyond its means militarily, but a lot of other European countries don't do a similar thing. And we could still be better. We could still be spending a lot more on our military and getting much better geopolitical positions because of that.
Exactly. Right. I completely agree with you, and I do think that Europe needs to put its house in order.
Absolutely. If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.